First of all, hallelujah!
It is 4th and 26. McNabb is back. He's looking. He is firing, and it is caught by Freddie Mitchell.
And Pizarczyk fumbles the football. It's picked up by Herman Edwards. 15, 10, 9, touchdown Eagles. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Jackson takes it at the 35. Picks it up. Looks for running room. He's at the 40. He's at the 45. Midfield. Oh! He's let it go! The short back. Oh! I don't care if he's short. He's running around. And he's in the end zone. And there's no time. And the Eagles win. Bring it back again. He steps up his head and falls forward. And he fumbles the football and the Eagles have it. And it's recovered. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
E-A-G-L-E-S Eagles!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Sundays for the Birds, a proud production of Old City Sports Network on this Victory Monday. That's right, your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles took down the Jacksonville Jaguars in what was a pretty close final score to my final prediction, 29-21 after trailing 14-0 in the first quarter. But we will dive into that in the coming segments. First, I got to introduce my awesome co-hosts, one Jake Long and one Kyle Not So Sharp. Jake, how you doing, brother?
Good. Might have got a little cold from getting dumped on for about 10 hours of straight rain and wind, but it was well worth it. I got scary there in the beginning. I was like, man, we might be leaving at halftime with a blowout. And then my hood flew off. The wind blew my hood off. We start to come back. I said, fuck, I'm not putting my hood back up the rest of the game. I'm just letting it rain on me. That's what I did.
Yeah, only the real one showed up and showed out yesterday. Yeah, I'm not fan bashing, but, you know, we can do better. Just a little rain. We should have a filled stadium every home game. I
will say the lower bowl was completely filled, and no one sat down the whole game. I think most of it's because the seats were soaked, but also because, I mean, it was a pretty intense game most of the time, and then we started taking over, and the place was rocking pretty good. Upper level, I was taking a look. It looked like a lot of people were scattering up towards the higher up seats because you got the overhang there, and then plus there were some people still just hanging out in the little tunnels that you come down to your seats. So,
right,
TV there's probably didn't look as many, but the lower bowl was definitely sold out, and it was rocking pretty good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Kyle, Not So Sharp. How you doing, brother?
Good. Ready to dive in, break down the game with you guys, talk a little bit about the positives, a little bit about the negatives, and ready to get into it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Before we dive into the positives about the game, let's talk about my personal positives. Boys, I had a fucking day gambling yesterday. Took the FanDuel account all the way down to $50. Had a few beverages in me yesterday. Hit a $232 parlay early on the 1 o'clock games. Rolled some of that into Sunday Night Football and a couple of the 4 o'clock games. Woke up this morning with some bets I didn't even remember placing that hit. Woke up to $470 in the account. You got to love that. Could have been even better. Went 17 out of 18 legs on a college parlay on Saturday. So Missouri State, if you're listening to this, go fuck yourself. All right, you cost me $700 fucking dollars. We got Von Anthony checking in here on Facebook. Says go Birds 4-0. Let's get to it. Hopefully the starters can get healthy. Yeah, you know, I haven't had a chance to look into the injury reports yet, but obviously there's some concern there with Slay and Mailata in particular. But let's dive into it, boys. I guess I'll start off with, what's your first impression of the game? What really stood out to you? Jake, I'll start with you.
What stood out is just finally, we faced some, hard times, down 14-0, and a tropical storm / hurricane, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was brutal out there. So for them to after that pick six and then letting up a touchdown, for them to just put it behind them, I think they're really buying that dog mentality that Coach Sirianni preaches. And you've seen it yesterday. They just put it behind them, put their heads down, and grinded out a win. I mean, when it was 14-0, we dominated the rest of the game. 29 unanswered points. They got a touchdown late, but I wish it could have stayed the way it was because the score looks a lot prettier. It would have been more of a blowout look than 29-21. But it's just the way we put our heads down and grinded out a win when we could have easily folded in. It was like, hey, this is one of those days. It's shitty out. It's 14-0. Let's just pack it in. Get ready for next week. But they didn't. They went to work.
Absolutely. It was definitely a hard hat game, that's for sure. Muck fest as it was out there. Kyle, I think I know where you're going to go with what stood out, but I'll let you say it anyway. So go ahead. What stood out to you here in yesterday's game?
So I wasn't going to lead right into Miles Sanders' big game. I was going to, give it a little leadway. But one of the keys to the game, I said before we all started, was taking care of the ball. That was really the big difference maker. Hurts had that pick early. Wasn't necessarily bad. It happens. But yeah, they kept care of the ball, took care of the ball. And you really saw from the get-go the offensive plan was to run the ball, establish the run, try to, make it easier on Hurts in the passing game. And Sanders had a day. And not only just him, but the offensive line as well. I mean, they had two guys check out due to injury, and the holes were still good. I mean, yeah, he still finished runs strong. He still did all that. But without some of those holes, some of those runs aren't happening. So the fact that you have two backup linemen in there and those holes are still being created, that's a good sign. And Buddy in the comments really touched on it in the start. They got to get healthy. I mean, two guys on the O-line. Tay left at one point. He came back in, and then they got Slay and Maddox on the defensive side of the ball. So, getting healthy is a big thing to look for. I don't think any of those injuries are serious from what Sirianni said, but it's still something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. Even this early part of the season, even if it's not a serious injury, those little nicks and bruises tend to add up. Two things that really stood out to me. I'm going to highlight two particular plays. The first one I'm going to highlight is the sack by TJ Edwards. That was perfect timed, instinctual football. So if you guys can remember the play, he had I think it was a running back out in the flat. He was covering the flat, and Lawrence was out on a bootleg. He's running out to his right, and it looks like he's getting ready to throw. Somebody was right behind TJ, took over that responsibility on the flat, and he just beelined it right for him.
I was going nuts for it. I was just like that.
Perfectly
nice
timed.
To see some good linebacker play for once. I mean, holy shit.
Absolutely. No, that was huge. So I want to give TJ his flowers on that. And the other one is the James Bradbury interception. That was huge. I mean, we talk so much about Darius Slay, but I said it before in a previous episode. Excuse me. I think that Bradbury, to be honest with you, has probably been the better of the two corners. While he's not taking the football away, they're not necessarily targeting him either. I think he's just been locking it down on that side. And then with
2 picks too on the season. I mean, that's
one of them a pick.
The whole season is good, yeah. So to have it already through 4 games, it's legit.
And that was a perfect job by him on that interception yesterday, jumping that route at a key moment in the red zone there.
I don't even think that was his guy. I think he was supposed to play the back end of the end zone.
And he just seen it and fucking planted his foot and took off. Made a hell of a grab. That could have been the game right there. They score there. It could be a completely different game.
Absolutely. That was a game-sealing interception, so I wanted to make sure that we touched on that.
Game-changing, not necessarily game-sealing.
Steve Roth checking in over on Facebook. What's up, Steve? Thanks for listening. Anything else really stood out to you guys? I know we touched a lot on the defense. Kyle mentioned taking care of the ball. Winning the turnover battle was huge. I'm sure we're going to talk about Hassan Reddick a little bit later in the episode.
I'm going to say, yep.
But that man was an absolute animal yesterday. Dare I say, a dog.
Yep.
So if you guys want to talk about defensive side of the ball, two guys that were kind of pressed into action, Josiah Scott and McPherson. They didn't really play great. Like if you go back and watch some of the stuff,
No,
they got called out of
position.
Thank you. Damn, brain fart.
Yeah, if it
Multiple
wasn't
times.
raining, I think they could have got lit up.
Absolutely. They could have gotten exposed a couple times. There's the one where McPherson bit on that double move by Agnew. And especially later in the game, fourth quarter, Josiah Scott was really getting beat a couple times. So if Trevor Lawrence had a terrible day, if he didn't really have that bad of a day, if the rain wasn't there, that's something to really make sure that they correct for next week. I don't know what the secondary is going to look like with Slay not playing or Maddox, but that's something to keep an eye on moving forward.
Tell you what, though, Doug Peterson had to have PTSD of Lawrence in the pocket in yesterday's game, just reminding him of Wentz after the Super Bowl year when he was just getting sacked and fumbling every time it seemed like he was hit. He was losing the ball.
Absolutely. Now, granted, the ball was absolutely soaked yesterday. Yeah. Jake, you can speak that out. I mean, it was a monsoon out there.
I mean, hey,
but you got to take care of the football.
And we didn't fumble at all. I mean, you got Miles Sanders, who's known for fumbling. I was waiting the whole game for it to happen, and he didn't. Jalen Hurts ran the ball 16 times. He didn't fumble. So, I mean, it's just you got to have better awareness, especially with playing a team like the Eagles. You see what they did last week. If they're not getting there, they're swatting at the ball. That's something that we haven't seen for a couple of years, and they're doing it now. So you got to be better than that if you're Trevor Lawrence. So I definitely know Peterson was looking at it like when I was watching, I was like, he looks exactly like Wentz right now. It was just terrible.
I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like Lawrence. I've always been a Lawrence truther, and he's really taken a step forward this year. So just to see the ball mishaps and some of them, the ball slippery, whatever. A couple of them, it just looked like a lack of pocket presence, just not knowing the situation around him. So I was kind of disappointed to see that. But, I mean, it worked out for the Eagles in the end. So,
yeah, absolutely. I do want to shout out Jason Kelce as well. Another phenomenal game by him. He's just a few games away now for the active players, most consecutive starts. So I want to shout him out for that as well. But there was one touchdown late by Miles Sanders where you saw Jason Kelce get out and run upfield opposite side of the right tackle, get up into that second level, take on the linebacker right as Miles was getting towards the goal line. He really made the touchdown and sealed the deal on that play, which is just vintage Jason Kelce. I mean, we see it year in and year out, this guy getting out to the second level. There's not too many centers in the league that are athletic enough to pull the way that they ask Kelce to do it in this offense. And that play in particular, I just really wanted to shout him out for that because, like I said, he made the touchdown and sealed the deal on that play.
And another guy who I feel like is probably one of the most underrated players in the league and maybe one of the most underrated players in the Eagles' history because he doesn't get talked about a lot is Lane Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, Trayvon Walker's number one pick. He completely shut him down. He wasn't even close to the quarterback. When he had the run block, he ran him off the line. Even when they were doing screens the other side, he's still blowing them up and moving them out of the way. And I just feel like Lane Johnson doesn't get talked about enough as one of the best tackles in the league. I understand because left tackles get more love, but, hey, you need a good right tackle too. And he's one of the best to ever do it. And he had a monster game. Baldy, he posts a lot of good breakdowns on Instagram and stuff. He did a good breakdown of Lane Johnson just completely dominating Walker. So I wanted to give him some love as well. I love Lane.
Yeah, man, pave the lane, Johnson. I tell you what, you got to look really hard to try and find something wrong with what the offensive line does, week in and week out. So definitely shout out those guys. Shout out Jeff Stoutland for getting them ready to play week in and week out.
So I wanted to ask you guys about two things, two coaches' decisions. The first one is these screen passes, wide receiver bubble screens to Goddard. What's your guys' thoughts on that? I know Goddard's good with yards after the catch, but when you got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith out there, that kind of seems a little counterintuitive, throwing some bubble screens to Goddard. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that first.
I mean, they've been working, so I'm sure they'll start mixing them in, faking it to Goddard, throwing it the other way to, say, A.J. Brown. Because I would love to see A.J. Brown get the ball in his hands as much as possible, even if it is on a wide receiver screen.
I
And
don't
you
think
have,
Goddard has that burst to take it at the distance like
yeah,
either of those guys. That's why I think it's a little maybe
but it's more like a first down type thing. Like he's gonna
Right.
get you 7 to 10 yards probably on most.
Right. He's not going to take it 50 yards to the house, but he'll definitely get you some yardage on it. And it's
fall
and-
forward,
and
get
as
you ahead
Jake
of the
mentioned,
chains.
it's been working.
And AJ Brown's a pretty good blocking receiver, and you got Pascal who's good at it. Devontae Smith, even though he's a skinny guy, he still gets in the way, and he'll go out there and run block if he has to. I just think
he's a willing
what's
blocker
going
for
on right
sure.
now in the game plan.
Speaking of blocking downfield, by the way, there was one wide receiver screen,
Oh my
which
God.
turned into a surefire touchdown that was then pulled back because of Goddard blocking downfield.
That's insane.
That was the right call.
No, it was not. He didn't even touch him.
He was 10 yards blocking downfield.
He didn't touch the guy.
What do you mean he didn't touch the guy?
I gotta look it up.
No,
Rewatch
Jake,
it. That was
I'll
absolutely the
admit,
wrong call.
I'm with Kyle on
The right
this one.
call.
It was the right call. That's a call that maybe you don't see them make in years past, but they are starting to try and key in on that. So it's definitely going to be called a little tighter than it was in years past. He was engaged with the guy. So the talking point for me on this is if you're Goddard there, you have to turn around. If you turn around like you're looking for the ball, like you're running a route, there's nothing they can do. They cannot throw the flag. Box him out, use that big ass of yours, and box out the defender and block them that way. And I think you have the same result with no flag.
Yeah, you could do that or let the guy come to you. I mean, it was only one guy. Let him come to you, block him right at the line of scrimmage. I don't like the call, but it is the rules. That is the right call if I were to be honest.
No, that's what I'm saying. I agree. It was the right call. Just like I said, I think in that moment you got to be a little more smart, a little smarter, knowing that they're keying in on that call this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And the other thing I wanted to ask you guys, less than 2 minutes to go, up 8. What's your thoughts on passing on the 36, 35-yard field goal? Make it a 2-possession game. I know the elements weren't good, but I still think within 40 that should be a makeable kick. Rather than go for it, they gave the Jags a little life. What's your thought on that coach's decision? Do you like it? Do you dislike it?
Well, I think after Jake Elliott got completely destroyed on the kick,
After he got ran into, he was a little tender on the sideline there.
I was watching him on the sideline, and he was kicking, and he looked like he was in some pain, and then he threw the jacket back on. So I think they were worried about him being hurt, not getting a hold of it, or it getting blocked, and then returning it for a touchdown.
And he had also already missed an extra point to this point in the game as well. So,
and they knew that they had no timeouts. They were going to have to throw the ball. They knew it was nearly impossible to throw the ball in those conditions, to drive 80 yards, whatever it was, to get a game-winning touchdown with no timeouts left.
All right. I didn't think of, if he was banged up leading into that at all. I was just thinking, to me, you go up 11, make it a 2-possession game. They have no timeouts. Like that's an easy decision for me. If it's inches,
no, that's
maybe
certainly
QB sneak it, but 3-4
that's
yards.
certainly smart football. But like Jake said, I mean, with Elliott being banged up in that situation, I think there's also something to be said for the coach trusting his defense. They'd played well all day. They'd taken the ball away several times. I think in that situation, he's betting on his team. And you know what? For me, I'll take the confidence in the guys any day of the week.
Yeah, and he did it early too. It was 14-0. We went for 4th and 6 or whatever, or even longer from 4th and goal when Hurts ran it in. Pretty much ran a QB draw, and Hurts carried 3 guys into the end zone. That's just having faith, because you could go 14-0, 14-3. Is
that the first touchdown of the game?
Yeah, that was after the bullshit flag call on Goddard.
That was a nice touchdown run, but he did have Gainwell open in the flat there, just for the record.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a designed run, because it looked like he took off pretty quick.
Yeah. I don't think it was designed. I could be wrong, but it looks like he just kind of read the situation. But Gainwell did flag open late in the flat, so it's just for the record. I mean, it was a powerful run. You just if he's short, that's a whole different situation. Maybe the game turns out differently.
Yep, but
For sure.
These guys.
Yeah, well, and if you guys read Peter King's article in the Pro Football Talk this morning, because he was there covering the game. He quoted Sirianni as telling Jalen Hurts, "I went for it there because I trust you." You know, at the end of the day, I'm never going to hate on the coach for trusting his guy.
Yeah.
No.
Especially the way that Hurts has been playing this year. Anything else you guys wanted to touch on before we move on to Dog of the Week?
No, I think we nailed it down pretty good.
All right, sounds good. Let's get into it. All right, boys, time for everybody's favorite segment, Dog of the Week. Start with you, Kyle. Who's your nominee for Dog of the Week?
Me going first is the right call there. I appreciate that nod from you. I was a week early on my call, but Dog of the Week's got to go Miles Sanders. He's ran physical, ran hard, snuffed the end zone twice, 100 yards. Yeah, he played great.
Almost 5 yards a clip, too.
Average
a
5
good
yards
nominee.
carry for his career.
Yeah, I mean, I could go a handful of things. I wrote down, I mean, Hassan Reddick had an absolute monster of a game. One of the only guys to have 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries in the same game. And he was just a menace all day. And we are starting to finally see what the reason we signed this guy. You know, he's finally getting out on the edge. It seems like they're like, all right, let's not drop him back in coverage. Just send this guy on each side of the ball and fucking fly at him. And that's what he's been doing. And then I picked in the beginning, pregame show, I said the O-line. And again, I mean, Miles Sanders, I think is who I'm going to eventually give it to. But, I mean, the offensive line, you have 2 key guys, especially Mailata going down. And they still come in and just completely dominate the line of scrimmage. When you know, when the defense knows you're going to run the ball and you still just line up and punch them in the mouth and drive them backwards, that's a hell of a job. And shout out D-line, too. They knew the Jaguars had to run the ball. And they held them under 4 yards a carry, one of the best rushing teams. So shout out to them. And then finally, the fans. I mean, we were some dogs out there tailgating at 8:30. Some people there earlier in the morning, pouring rain, wind. I stayed the whole game with my nephew. You know, most people did that made it out. So,
Dude, I heard a guy on WIP this morning said that he got there at 1 o'clock in the morning to start setting up their tailgate.
yeah, I don't understand how they're allowed to do that, but I know most of the lots don't open up till like 7. So you'll see like people in RVs just lined up on the side of the road, like waiting until 7 o'clock to go in.
Absolutely nuts. Yeah, shout out the fans. You guys that were out there yesterday are absolutely the real ones, the true Birds faithful. Now my nominee for Bird of the Week, I got to co-sign Miles Sanders. I've been one of his biggest critics through this season. Obviously Hassan Reddick, another huge game by him. But we've given quite a bit of love to the defense here recently. I think it's time we shed some light on the offense here. You're seeing Miles Sanders run aggressive, run angry, a lot more of the north-south kind of stuff that we've kind of been hoping to see from him. And lastly, I mean, you touched on it earlier, Jake. He didn't fumble the football yesterday.
Huge.
If there was ever a game where you could expect a Miles Sanders fumble, it would have been yesterday in that absolute mess. And the guy held on to the ball and, found the end zone twice. It's hard for me really to find anything wrong with the game that Miles Sanders put out there yesterday.
And he's third in the league in rushing right now.
Absolutely. And not for nothing, too, going into that game, the Jaguars were only allowing 55 yards per game on the ground. Yeah. One of the top rush defenses in the league up until yesterday.
Yeah, 3.1 yards carry they were giving up. Miles Sanders had like 4.96 yards to carry. Pretty much 5. I'll round it up to 5 yards to carry, 2 touchdowns. It's definitely the dog of the game. Has to be.
Yeah, I think so. I do want to throw an honorable mention by way of Shane Steichen. I mentioned them in the pregame show. Like I said, I knew it was going to be one of those games where we're going to have to rely heavily on the screens and on the run game. And, in that situation, when the opposing team knows where you're going. How can you kind of scheme some things up, some creative blocking schemes, and some motions and stuff like that to kind of open some things up in the run game and in the screen game. And I think he did it for the most part. If I had any criticism for Steichen, it would be maybe a little too much play calls going to the outside on the runs. We had such a good game going north and south. The sweep just wasn't there, particularly to the left side with Mailata out. So just mild criticism there. But, yeah, I think it's easy to say Dog of the Week this week goes to Miles Sanders.
100%.
Absolutely. Want to thank our sponsors here for Dog of the Week segment. That is Neshaminy Creek Brewing Company. Check them out at NeshaminyCreekBrewing.com. Also, Sterling Pig Brewing Company right in the heart of Delco. Check out the tap room in media. Check out the website, sterlingpig.com. Appreciate you guys for supporting this segment and this show. Shout out Sterling Pig and Neshaminy Creek. All right, ready to dive into our little gambling recap here?
Yeah, let's hit it.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Is it just me or does Kyle look like Walter White in that cartoon?
I don't know who that
Got
is.
his chest hair coming up and everything.
Yep.
Walter
Eyes look
White?
all sunken in. You want me to give you some time to Google it?
Yeah. I'll get
All right,
the
now-
fuck out of here. Walter White.
Not so sharp picks of the week brought to you by our friends at Righteous Felon Beef Jerky. That's righteousfelon.com. Use our promo code OCSN for 15% off your entire order of delicious craft jerky made right here in the Delaware Valley, right in the heart of Westchester. Also brought to you by our friends at Fanatics. We are now affiliated with Fanatics, and if you want to let them know how much you love our show and how much you love all your Philly teams, for everything official, go to Fanatics. Use our link down in the episode description. All right, guys. Not so sharp picks of the week. How did we fare?
I wasn't sharp at all. So you weren't winning any money if you took my picks. I had the Vikings minus 3.5. I'm pretty sure they won by 3. The Colts lost by a touchdown. The Ravens should have won. They blew a 20-3 lead. Ended up losing by a field goal. And the only pick that won was the Jets beating those shitty Steelers, which was nice to see. Everyone was like, oh, Kenny Pickett looked good. I had 3 incompletions. They were all interceptions.
He didn't look that great.
No. And it was the Jets.
Now, I came pretty close to mine hitting,
Yeah, you did.
but there's no moral victories here on Victory Monday.
Nope.
The only thing that I missed was the under hitting in the Eagles game. Everything else hit. So, again, no moral victories. I got to be better. I'm going to come back here next week prepared.
Yeah, I hit 2 or 3 as well. I just missed by 1 as well. But while we're on the gambling segment, I wanted to shout out my boy Miles Sanders. I mentioned it. I don't know if maybe I have to go back and find a clip. I mentioned it before the season started. Plus 4,000 to lead the league in rushing. I know it's only 4 weeks, but there's a shot, and it doesn't look too crazy through 4 weeks. So I just want to shout my guy out again real quick.
Did you put money on it?
Yeah, I got a 50 on it.
There you go.
There we go. By the way, I'm glad that your Ravens pick did not hit, Jay, because I had that in my 1 o'clock parlay. So a little inside baseball. I usually do a parlay every week on all the 1 o'clock games, and that usually sets the tone for the rest of my gambling day on Sunday. And I just so happened to hit. I was in the bar watching the last of them unfold. It came down to the wire there in the Bills versus the Ravens. Thankfully, the Bills came out on top. It was all straight money line picks. And I did take one of your picks there, Jake, and I did pick the Jets over the Steelers. Another one that kind of got eked out there at the end.
Yep. At least someone wants some money this week. I just spent a shitload yesterday.
Hey, you know what, though? You're making memories.
Exactly. It was a hell of a time.
Yeah, man. All right, boys, we ready to roll in the final thoughts? Wrap this kitten up. Kyle's
Yeah,
favorite segment.
Might pull Kyle today.
Final thoughts, as always, brought to you by our friends at Lugaroo. That's lugaroo.co. Check out Lugaroo for all your custom clothing needs. Also, I did forget to shout out Norse Beards on our Not So Sharp Picks of the Week segment. So my bad. Shout out Norse Beards. Promo code OCS for 25% off your entire order from our friends at Norse Beards. All right, boys, final thoughts. General Kyle, what do you got?
General Kyle, I like it. Before we hop off the pod, I just don't want to go a whole pod without mentioning Jack Driscoll. Obviously, Sanders is the dog of the game. We all agree on that. We talked about the O-line as a generality. You mentioned Kelsey, Sean, Jake. You mentioned Lane Johnson. Jack Driscoll coming off the bench, playing left tackle. He played great. I think it'd be a disservice to him that if we didn't mention him. So I just want to give him a quick shout out. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And he's a guy that has spent most of his time in the league filling in at either the guard position or right tackle. So for him to step in to arguably the second hardest position on the offensive line, and there not really be that much of a drop off is a credit to him. And it's also a credit to Jeff Stoutland. I mean, this guy is the best offensive line coach in the league. You will never be able to change my mind about that. He is now here for his third coach since he's come on board with the Eagles. He was hired by Chip Kelly, made it all the way through Doug Peterson, and now here with the Nick Sirianni regime. And there's a reason for that. So shout out Jeff Stoutland.
Give that man whatever he wants.
Absolutely. Jake, what do you got here? Final thoughts.
My final thoughts is that rain whooped my ass yesterday. I was spending all day at work. I'm ready for bed. Once I hop off here, I'm going to go pop a melatonin, put the football game on, and probably fall asleep 5 minutes in. So I'm just ready for bed at this point.
Right on, right on. All right, guys. My final thoughts. I'm loving the hell out of this football season already. Today was a great day to have a great day, especially when I woke up undefeated, just like everybody else in the Delaware Valley. We woke up today 4-0. There's nothing better. The only unbeaten team remaining in the NFL. Our birds are flying high, and I couldn't be happier. I'm going to end it on this note. Fly, Eagles, fly. We appreciate the hell out of everybody rocking with us here live tonight, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube Live. Shout out our biggest fan, Steve Roth, down in the comment section. And last but not least, don't forget to be a friend, tell a friend where they can get the best Eagles talk in the Delaware Valley. That's right here on Old City Sports Network on Sundays for the Birds, the only podcast that makes every day feel like Sunday. We'll catch you back here for our preview pod Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Be there. Go Birds!
B-A-T-L!